He threw me out in the rain at midnight. 7 months pregnant. Called me worthless. Called our baby a mistake. What he didn't know. My father owned the company that was about to fire him. But here's the thing. This isn't just a revenge story. This is about the night I lost everything and discovered who I really was. Stay with me, because what happened next changed my life forever. Before we start, if you believe people should get what they deserve, hit that subscribe button right now. And comment, I know my worth, if you've ever had to walk away from someone who didn't value you. Trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends. My name is Isabella, and this is my story. Welcome to Reality Stories Hub. While you are here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. You know, sometimes we hide parts of ourselves because we want to know if people will love us for who we really are, not for what we have. That's exactly what I did. And let me tell you, it taught me the hardest lesson of my life. My name is Isabella, and this is my story. 3 years ago, I made a choice that changed everything. I decided to hide the truth about my family. You see, my father, Robert Martinez, owns one of the biggest pharmaceutical companies in North America. We're talking about hospitals, research labs, medicine distribution across 12 countries. The kind of money that most people can't even imagine. Growing up in Toronto, I watched it all. I saw women throwing themselves at my father's business partners. I saw men smile at me with fake interest, their eyes calculating how much I was worth. It made me sick. I didn't want that life. I didn't want someone to love my bank account. I wanted someone to love me, just me, the real Isabella. The woman who loves reading books on rainy days. The woman who cries during sad movies. The woman who burns toast but tries her best. That woman, not the heiress. So when I turned 26, I moved out of my father's estate. I rented a small apartment in downtown Vancouver. Nothing fancy, just a one-bedroom place with creaky floors and a view of the street below. I got a job as a nurse at a local clinic. I worked hard, I paid my own bills, and for the first time in my life, I felt free. Free from the judgment. Free from the gold diggers. Free to find something real. That's when I met Daniel Foster. It was at a community fundraiser for children's health. I was volunteering, helping organize the donation tables. He walked up with this confident smile, wearing a nice suit, looking like he had his life together. We started talking, and he made me laugh. Really laugh, the kind that makes your stomach hurt. He told me about his job as a regional manager at a tech supply company. He talked about his dreams, his goals, how he wanted to build something meaningful. He seemed genuine. He seemed kind. We dated for almost a year, and I fell in love. Head over heels, completely, stupidly in love. He would bring me flowers for no reason. He would hold my hand while we walked through the park. He made me feel special, like I mattered. So when he proposed to me at that same fundraiser where we met, I said yes without hesitation. My heart was so full I thought it would burst. My father met Daniel exactly once before the wedding. We had dinner at a nice restaurant, nothing too fancy. I didn't want to overwhelm Daniel. After dinner, my father pulled me aside in the parking lot. His face was serious, concerned. "Isabella, sweetheart," he said carefully. "Are you absolutely certain about this man? I can have my team look into his background, check his character, make sure everything is solid." I remember feeling annoyed. I thought my father was being overprotective, unable to let go of his little girl. "Dad," I told him firmly, "I need to do this my way. I need to know that someone can love me without knowing about all of this. Please, just trust me." My father looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. He's always respected my choices, even when he disagreed. That's the kind of man he is. He hugged me tight that night and whispered, "I just want you to be happy, Mija." The wedding was small and beautiful. Just close friends and family. Daniel's mother, Patricia, was there with her tight smile and cold eyes. From the very first day I met her, she made little comments. Little cuts that hurt more than big insults. She would say things like, "Oh, Isabella, is that what you're wearing?" Or, "Daniel, honey, are you sure she knows how to handle household finances?" I tried to ignore it. I tried to be the perfect daughter-in-law. I smiled through her criticism. I helped with family dinners. I did everything right. After the wedding, we moved into his family's house. Daniel said it made financial sense. His mother owned this big house in the suburbs, and we could save money while he climbed higher in his company. I agreed because I wanted to support my husband. I wanted to be a good wife. I kept working at the clinic, saving every penny, cooking dinner every night, keeping everything clean. Playing the role perfectly. Then, 6 months into our marriage, I got pregnant. I'll never forget the moment I saw those 2 pink lines on the test. I was shaking with happiness. I ran to tell Daniel, tears of joy streaming down my face. At first, he smiled. He hugged me. But something changed after that day. Something I couldn't quite understand. He started coming home later and later from work. He stopped asking about my day. He would snap at me over the smallest things, like dinner being 5 minutes late or the TV being too loud. His mother got worse too. She started making comments about how we couldn't afford a baby, how I was trapping her son, how this was a terrible mistake. Every day felt heavier than the last. I kept quiet. I kept trying. I kept hoping that things would get better once the baby arrived. I thought maybe he was just scared. Maybe he just needed time to adjust. I made excuses for him because I loved him, because I was carrying his child, because I wanted to believe in the man I married. But hope can only carry you so far when the truth is staring you in the face. It was a Thursday evening in February. I was 7 months pregnant, my belly round and heavy, feeling our baby kick inside me throughout the day. Those kicks were the only thing keeping me going through the tension in that house. Every movement reminded me that soon I would be a mother, and that gave me strength. Daniel had left his phone on the kitchen counter. He was upstairs taking a shower. I was cleaning up after dinner, wiping down the counters when his phone buzzed. I wasn't trying to snoop, I swear I wasn't. But the screen lit up right in front of me, and I saw the message preview. It was from someone named Amber. "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby. Wear that cologne I love. Miss you so much." My heart stopped. Actually stopped. I felt like someone had punched me in the chest. My hands started trembling so badly I almost dropped the dish I was holding. I looked around the empty kitchen, suddenly feeling like the walls were closing in. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. But I picked up that phone with shaking hands. And I looked. Months of messages. Months and months of texts between Daniel and this woman, Amber Wilson. She worked in his office. They had been seeing each other for 6 months, half of our marriage. The messages were romantic, intimate, full of plans and promises. He complained about me in those texts. He said I was boring. He said the pregnancy was a burden. He said he felt trapped. He called our baby, our precious baby, a mistake. I sat down on the cold kitchen floor and cried. I cried so hard I thought I might throw up. My baby was kicking like she could feel my pain, and that made me cry even harder. How could he do this? How could the man who promised to love me, who stood in front of our friends and family and made vows, betray me like this? How could he betray our child? But I didn't want to be dramatic. I didn't want to scream and throw things. So I waited. I wiped my tears. I stood up. I put his phone back exactly where it was. And I waited for him to come home from wherever he was really going that night. He walked through the door just after 11. His hair was messy. He smelled like perfume that wasn't mine. I was sitting at the dining room table with his phone in front of me. "We need to talk," I said quietly. He looked at the phone. His face went completely white. "Isabella, I can explain," he started, but I held up my hand to stop him. "Are you having an affair with Amber?" I asked. My voice was steady even though inside I was screaming. He stared at me for a long moment. And then, instead of apologizing, instead of begging for forgiveness, something in him changed. His face twisted with anger. "You know what?" he said, his voice getting louder. Yes. Yes, I am. Because you're not the woman I thought you were. You're boring, Isabella. You're broke. And now you're pregnant, and I feel suffocated. I feel trapped in this life." Each word hit me like a slap. But before I could even respond, I heard footsteps on the stairs. His mother appeared, still in her robe. She must have been listening to everything. "Daniel's absolutely right," Patricia said coldly, crossing her arms. "You were never good enough for this family. You came from nothing. You are nothing. And you trapped my son with that baby. You probably planned this whole thing." I stood up slowly, my hands protectively on my belly. I felt my baby moving inside me. "I'm your wife," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I'm carrying your grandchild. Your blood. How can you say these things?" Daniel actually laughed. He laughed at me while I was crying and pregnant and breaking apart. "That baby is a mistake," he said. "And you need to leave. Right now. Pack your things and get out of my house." It was midnight. It was raining outside, the kind of cold rain that cuts right through you. I was 7 months pregnant. "Daniel, please," I begged. I was actually begging. "Just let me stay tonight. It's late. It's raining. I'll leave first thing in the morning. I promise. Please." But he was already walking to our bedroom, grabbing my suitcase from the closet. He started throwing my clothes into it, not folding anything, just shoving everything in. His mother joined in, pulling my things from drawers, stuffing them into garbage bags like I was trash being thrown out. I was crying, begging them to stop, to think about the baby. To think about me. You should have thought about that before you trapped him, Patricia hissed at me, her face full of disgust. Daniel dragged my suitcase down the stairs. The sound of it bumping on each step will haunt me forever. He opened the front door. The rain was pouring down, cold and relentless. He threw my suitcase onto the porch, and it fell over, spilling some of my clothes into the rain. Daniel, please, I stood in the doorway, soaking wet already, shaking. I'm 7 months pregnant. Where am I supposed to go? He looked at me with such coldness. Such hatred. Like I was a stranger. Like I was nothing. That's not my problem anymore, he said. And he slammed the door in my face. I heard the lock click. That sound, that final click, was the sound of my whole world ending. I stood on that porch in the rain for what felt like forever, but was probably only a few minutes. My clothes were soaked through. My suitcase was tipped over, my belongings scattered and getting wet. I could see lights turning on in the neighbors' houses. People were watching. People were seeing me, 7 months pregnant, being thrown out like garbage in the middle of the night. The humiliation burned almost as much as the betrayal. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and called for a ride. The driver who picked me up was an older woman. She took one look at me, pregnant, crying, soaking wet with garbage bags full of my life, and her face filled with concern. Honey, are you okay? Do you need me to take you to a hospital? She asked gently. No, I whispered. Just take me to the nearest hotel. Please. She kept glancing at me in the mirror during the drive, worried. When we got to the budget hotel, she helped me carry my bags to the entrance. You take care of yourself and that baby, she said, squeezing my hand. The night clerk looked at me with such pity. I must have looked like a disaster. I checked into a room, and the second the door closed behind me, I collapsed onto the bed and cried. I cried until my throat hurt. I cried until I couldn't breathe. I was so worried about my baby, about the stress, about everything falling apart. At 2 a.m, I finally called the one person I should have called hours ago. Dad, I sobbed into the phone. I need you. There was a pause. Then my father's voice came through, and it was different. Cold in a way I had never heard before. Dangerous. Where are you right now? He asked. I told him the name of the hotel. Stay exactly where you are. Don't move. My driver will be there in 20 minutes. We'll talk when you get home. Home. I hadn't been to my father's mansion since my wedding day. I had kept my distance, trying to prove I could make it on my own. Trying to prove that my marriage was real and based on love, not money. When the black car pulled up outside the hotel, I recognized the driver immediately. James had worked for my father for 15 years. He had driven me to school when I was younger. When he saw me, pregnant and broken, his eyes filled with tears. Miss Isabella, he said softly, let's get you home. The drive back to my father's estate felt like traveling to another world. We left the small streets and budget hotels behind and drove into the wealthy part of the city where mansions sat behind gates and trees. When we pulled up to my childhood home, all the lights were on. My father was standing at the front door, still in his robe, waiting. He's a tall man, my father. Strong and dignified. His hair has more gray now than it did when I left. When he saw me step out of the car, his face crumpled. This man who runs a billion-dollar company, who negotiates with world leaders, looked like he might break. He walked down the steps and hugged me so carefully, mindful of my pregnant belly. Come inside, Mija, he whispered. You're home now. Inside, everything was exactly as I remembered. The marble floors, the high ceilings, the paintings on the walls. And upstairs, my bedroom was untouched. My stuffed animals were still on the shelf. My books were still organized how I left them. My father had kept it like a museum, waiting for me to come back. We sat in his study, the same room where he had worried about my marriage a year ago. I told him everything. The affair. The cruelty. Being thrown out in the rain while pregnant. His mother's words. All of it. He listened without interrupting, but I could see his jaw clenching tighter and tighter. His hands gripped the arms of his chair, so hard his knuckles turned white. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, What do you want me to do, Isabella? I thought about it. I thought about revenge. About destroying Daniel completely. But that's not who I am. I want justice, I finally said. I want him to understand what he's done. I want consequences. Real consequences. My father nodded slowly. Then he opened his laptop and pulled up some documents. He turned the screen toward me. Do you know Foster Tech Solutions? He asked. I nodded. That was the company Daniel worked for. He was so proud of his position there, regional manager, moving up the ladder. Martinez Pharmaceuticals owns 70% of Foster Tech Solutions, my father said calmly. We acquired the majority share 5 years ago. I've been a silent partner. Daniel has absolutely no idea that he works for me. I stared at the screen, my mind trying to process what this meant. The contracts. The ownership papers. Everything was right there. You mean I started but couldn't finish? I mean your husband works for me, my father said, and he just made the biggest mistake of his life. My father called his lawyer that same night. Lawrence Chin had been our family attorney for 20 years. When he arrived at 3 in the morning and saw me pregnant and heartbroken, he just set his briefcase down and gave me a hug. We're going to make this right, he promised. My father also called his executive assistant, Victoria Brooks. She had known me since I was a little girl. She had helped plan my childhood birthday parties. When she saw me, she cried. The 3 of them sat around my father's desk and started planning. But this wasn't about revenge. My father made that very clear. We're not going to destroy him, my father said firmly. We're going to give him exactly what he deserves. Nothing more, nothing less. We're going to show him consequences. Monday morning came. Daniel went to work like everything was normal. He had no idea that Martinez Pharmaceuticals had called an emergency board meeting at Foster Tech Solutions. New protocols were being put in place. Performance reviews for all executives. Heightened ethics standards. Enhanced auditing procedures. Daniel was nervous, according to what we heard later. But he thought he was safe. He had decent sales numbers. He was good at his job, or so he believed. Over the next 2 weeks, everything started unraveling for him. First, the ethics department opened an investigation. Someone had reported his relationship with Amber, who was technically his subordinate in the company. That's a fireable offense in any major corporation. Then his sales records were audited closely. They found irregularities. Not fraud exactly, but sloppy work. Inflated numbers. Missed targets that he had covered up with creative reporting. The walls were closing in, and Daniel had no idea why everything was happening at once. He tried to call me. Over and over. He sent hundreds of text messages. But I had blocked him on everything. He couldn't find me because I was living in my father's mansion in a neighborhood he didn't even know existed. According to mutual friends, he was panicking. Amber was pressuring him to make their relationship official, to file for divorce so they could be together. His mother was in his ear constantly, telling him to get ahead of the situation. But you can't get ahead of the truth when it's already caught up with you. Then came the day that changed everything for Daniel. He was called to the main headquarters for a meeting with a representative from Martinez Pharmaceuticals. He walked into that conference room thinking he could charm his way through whatever this was. He was good at talking, good at making excuses. Instead, he found Lawrence Chin sitting at the head of the table with a file in front of him. Mr. Foster, Lawrence said formally. I'm here on behalf of Robert Martinez, majority shareholder of Foster Tech Solutions. Lawrence opened the file and slid a photograph across the table. It was from my childhood. Me and my father at one of his pharmaceutical conferences. I was wearing a formal dress, my hair done beautifully, looking every bit like the heiress I was born to be. Do you recognize this young woman? Lawrence asked. Daniel stared at the photo, confused. Then Lawrence slid another photo across. My wedding photo. That's my wife, Daniel said slowly, his voice uncertain. Estranged wife, Lawrence corrected. Also known as Isabella Martinez, daughter of Robert Martinez, heiress to the Martinez pharmaceutical empire. The woman you threw out of your home while she was 7 months pregnant with your child. My father had security footage of that meeting. He had it recorded for legal purposes. I watched it later. Daniel's face went from confused to pale to completely white. His hands started shaking on the table. That's not possible, he whispered. She's a nurse. She's broke. She lives in a small apartment. She drives an old car. She's a nurse because she chose to be, Lawrence interrupted. She wanted to find genuine love, so she hid her background. And you, Mr. Foster, proved exactly why she had to do that. Lawrence laid out everything. The affair with Amber. The cruelty. The betrayal. Throwing me out while pregnant. Daniel tried to speak, tried to defend himself, but what could he possibly say? Then Lawrence delivered the final blow. You're suspended immediately pending the completion of the ethics investigation. Given the evidence we've compiled, termination is extremely likely. However, Mr. Martinez is a fair and reasonable man. He's willing to offer you a choice. You can accept the consequences professionally, or this can become much more difficult for you. What does that mean? Daniel asked, his voice breaking. It means, Lawrence said, that Mr. Martinez would like to speak with you. And depending on how that conversation goes, your future will be decided. Daniel was given the address to my father's estate. He drove there that same afternoon. I watched him on the security cameras as he pulled up in his car. He looked so small suddenly, so desperate. He was begging over the intercom at the gate, pleading to see me. My father looked at me and asked, "Do you want to see him?" I surprised myself by saying yes. But on my terms. Daniel was brought into the formal sitting room, the one we used for business associates and people who weren't really family. I took my time getting ready. I had spent the morning at the salon. My hair was done beautifully. I wore an elegant navy dress that showed off my pregnant belly with pride. I wore my mother's diamond necklace, the one she left me when she passed away. I looked at myself in the mirror before going downstairs, and I saw someone different. Not the broken woman who had been thrown out in the rain. I saw Isabella Martinez, and I looked like exactly who I was. When I walked into that room, Daniel stood up immediately. I watched his eyes take everything in. The mansion, the expensive art on the walls, my elegant appearance, the confidence in the way I carried myself, the realization spreading across his face like ice water. "Isabella," he started, his voice cracking with desperation. "Please, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't understand who you were. Please, you have to forgive me. I love you. I've always loved you." I sat down gracefully in the chair across from him. I looked at this man who I had loved so completely. This man who had destroyed me without a second thought. And I felt nothing but sadness. Sadness for who I thought he was. Sadness for the life I thought we would have. "You didn't know what, Daniel?" I asked calmly. "That I had money? That my father could end your career? That I came from wealth?" "Yes, no, he stammered, sweating now. "I'm sorry for how I treated you. That was wrong. I was scared. I made a terrible mistake. But I love you. I want to fix this. I want to be a father to our baby. Please give me another chance." I almost laughed. Almost. But instead, I just felt tired. "Daniel, you don't love me," I said quietly. "You never did. When you thought I was poor, I wasn't good enough for you or your mother. I was boring. I was nothing. You threw me out like trash. But now that you know I'm wealthy, suddenly I'm worth fighting for? That's not love. That's greed. That's fear of consequences." He started crying then, real tears streaming down his face. But they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of panic. Tears of a man watching his life crumble. "Here's what's going to happen," I said firmly. "We're getting divorced. You will sign papers giving me full custody of our child. You will make a public apology for your treatment of me. You will accept whatever consequences come from your job. And in return, my father won't completely destroy you." "What does that mean?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "It means you'll still have a career," I explained. "Not at Foster Tech Solutions. Not in management. But somewhere. You'll start over at the bottom, where you should have stayed until you learned how to treat people with basic human decency. My father will make sure you're not blacklisted completely. But your reputation will take a hit. People will know what kind of man you are." Daniel looked desperate. He tried to argue. He tried to negotiate. But what choice did he really have? Within 1 week, the divorce papers were signed. Amber was fired for her inappropriate relationship with a superior. Daniel was terminated from Foster Tech Solutions, but given a small severance package and a reference for entry-level positions at other companies. My father kept his word. He didn't destroy Daniel completely, but he made sure there were real consequences. Patricia, Daniel's mother, lost her social standing when word spread through their community about how they had treated me. The truth always finds a way of getting out. People talk. And they remembered a pregnant woman being thrown out in the rain at midnight. 3 months later, on a beautiful spring morning, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. 8 pounds, 2 ounces, with a full head of dark hair and eyes that looked right into my soul. I named her Sophia, which means wisdom, because this whole experience had taught me so much about life, about people, about my own strength. My father was in the delivery room with me, holding my hand through every contraction, every push. When the nurse placed Sophia in my arms for the first time, he cried. This strong man who runs a pharmaceutical empire cried like a baby. She looks exactly like you did, he whispered, touching her tiny hand. Sophia will grow up knowing her worth. She'll never have to hide who she is to be loved. Looking back now, 3 years later, people sometimes ask me if I regret hiding my background. If I wish I had told Daniel the truth from the beginning. And the answer is no. Absolutely not. Because hiding who I was revealed exactly who he was. If he had known about my father's money from the start, he would have treated me differently. But not because he loved me more. He would have just been playing a different game. At least this way, I know the truth. I know exactly what kind of man he was. And I know my daughter deserves so much better than a father who only values wealth over character. My father didn't destroy Daniel completely. He actually helped him eventually get a job at a smaller company, starting from the bottom in customer service. He's working his way back up, hopefully learning some humility along the way. I don't wish him harm. I don't spend my time thinking about revenge. I just hope he learns. I hope he understands that people are not disposable. That pregnant women deserve protection and love, not cruelty. That marriage vows should mean something. Today, Sophia is 3 years old. She's smart, funny, and full of life. She knows her grandfather adores her. She's growing up in a home filled with love and security. She'll never wonder if people love her for her money or for who she is, because I'm going to teach her that anyone worth having in her life will love all of her completely. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction. It's simply living well. It's raising your child with love. It's knowing that you stood up for yourself when it mattered most. It's letting someone see exactly what they lost and knowing they can never get it back. I'm Isabella Martinez. I know my worth, and I'm teaching my daughter to know hers too. If this story touched your heart, I hope you'll remember this. Never dim your light for people who can't handle your shine. Never hide your worth for people who won't value it anyway. And never, ever let anyone make you feel like you're not enough. Because you are enough. You've always been enough. Thank you for listening to my story.